right, brother. How are you? Welcome to Superhero Politics Podcast.
Thank you. I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
Good, good, good. Thank you for being on. I um just always we introduce ourselves, and our to our listeners, and so give you an opportunity now to tell our listeners a little bit about you and your connection to comic books and your connection to politics.
Yeah, for sure. So my name's Joshua Drumming. Uh, I've been reading comics for as long as I can remember. Um, like a little bit of, I primarily do DC and Marvel, but I do a little bit of everything. Uh, Image, Virgin, Titan, Concrete, you name it. In terms of actually attached to that, um, academically speaking, I try to inject comic books whenever I can.
Yeah.
My senior thesis actually, so I was a political science major, and my senior thesis had to be about neoliberalism. So I was like, I'm going to talk about neoliberalism and comic books.
Right.
So yeah, so like my thesis ended up talking about how, white supremacy is so pervasive that you can see it even in, juvenile mediums. Um, and how neoliberal policies exacerbate all of the effects uh, of white supremacy. Um, in law school, it was much harder to incorporate comic books. Um, but I actually did end up finding this one Kirby case. That's all I could do.
Mhm.
Wasn't very much, but yeah, like I've been, loving comic books forever. I've been loving politics and law forever. I was actually on a municipal level political campaign when I lived in Indianapolis. I hope to get on some future campaigns in the future, but yeah, that's a little bit about
Well,
myself.
that's awesome. So, where did you, are you still, have you graduated law school yet, or are you still in law school?
So I graduated law school May
Where
22,
where did you attend?
GW Law.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great, great. So you said that you worked on the municipal level campaign, and you hope to get on those in the future. And so, like I always tell my listeners, the reason why this is born is because I, much like yourself, grew up loving comic books and getting involved in politics, and always saw the parallels, much like you do. I feel like I'm having a conversation with a younger version of myself, because you're tracking kind of the same way that I discovered, and ended up, um, here on this podcast and formation of this podcast, which is Superhero Politics. And so, I myself currently am a sitting city councilman, running for reelection this year. And so, it's really great to always find someone who has kind of a kindred view of the way and the intersectionalities between two seemingly independent genres of things. And
Yeah.
so, what was the first comic book that you read that, even as a youngster, that really piqued you and said, "Yeah, this is something that transcends just the idea of superpowers and heroes and villains"? What was the first comic book that you read that really connected you to the idea of politics running throughout comic books?
That's really, really hard. I know there are some people that are really good about remembering, like, oh yeah, my first comic book was this, and maybe I'm not sure. Like, one that I read a while ago and definitely made me feel this way. Realistically, it probably wasn't my first. Um, but I'm gonna say Kingdom Come.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kingdom Come is a masterpiece. Uh I got it from the library and I was just going to, read it, return it. I was like, oh no, I need to buy this. Um, so I bought that as soon as I finished reading it. And, just really talking about how, just how we organize this world, and what is, what is good, what is evil, and also, like, is there a possibility to have you derive maleficence from inaction, when it comes to, Superman in that
Yeah.
story. By the way, Superman's like my favorite hero to this day.
Wow, bro, we are really honestly like different. Like we're different. Like I feel like Superman is my favorite as well. So I feel like we're just essentially, like kindred versions, man, because we're tracking the same hero. And that was going to be my question. Like how when you said Kingdom Come, I immediately knew that Superman was your guy because that is one of the most quintessential works that shows really the dichotomy of how Superman lives in the world, like where he fits into the world, what his effect and his presence is when it's very apparent, and what is his effect and it is when he's not apparent. And so it's that really that power
Hmm.
and who has it and how it's concentrated and what it does when it's active and versus inactive. And so that's a great work, man. It's one of my favorites as well. And so now that you've like when you had that realization that one of your favorite things, um, comic books, is now driving you towards something else that is an essential part of your life. Like how much passion did you discover for connecting the two? Because I know it was always a central theme in my life, like the use of power, the abuse of power, the distribution of power, like all of the different underlying tones of comic books, and it really
Yeah.
drove and informed my politics and my own political views. How did it do that for you?
Yeah, like I think that um so you mentioned distribution of power. I think that's, such an important, subject. Um I have made parallels between, political power and, superpowers in the past. So if we were using that framework for the real world, who would have the superpowers? It would be white people, right?
Exactly.
Um, and black people, brown people, we're, you know, left on the ground looking up. We are disenfranchised, um, where we literally lack self-determinism. Um, and everyone wants to be Superman, or Spider-Man, or name your favorite hero, right? Um, and we have a lot of black kids and black adults that do fundamentally feel powerless in our current system. So it's about redressing the wrongs that um lead to that feeling and reality of powerlessness. um it's really tough. It's and there's, as like there's so many different pieces, like the legal field, the political field, the social field, et cetera, that you have to target. The popular culture field, you have to target to imbue people with that sense of power, and the actual concretized
Mhm.
power. you know
Certainly. Yeah. So and it's odd that you say that, not odd, but it's kind of prescient that you say that, is because when you think about that, I remember in the original Whedon cut of well, the Whedon cut of Justice League, they have that scene with Flash and Batman, and he asked him what's your superpower, and he says I'm rich. And you think about that, you think about how we have wealth and wealth distribution and generational wealth built from generational theft
hmm
in this country looks like superpowers. Other people are flying where some people have to walk. And so when you said that we're constantly on the ground looking up, that's how the world feels as Superman flies above them, as the heroes fly above them. And so it makes ordinary people feel powerless. And I always think about, the Superman is America, and then the rest of the world is just kind of the playground.
Yeah.
Superman flies into whatever country he needs to fly into to help, but there's always some damage that happens when he goes into help.
Yeah.
And so it's even though the intentions may be altruistic, there's always collateral damage that happens when something of that great a power goes in to something with lesser power.
Yeah. Absolutely. Um, yeah, and one thing I love, one change that I think was so important, several years back, they changed it from, truth, justice, and the American way to, a less American centric motto, which I
Mm-hmm.
love because, you know, like let's look at, Superman. One thing I always love talking about with Superman is, his connection so I'm a devout Christian, right?
Same.
And and Superman is definitely, positioned in that kind of Judeo-Christian messianic, position, right? Um, so if we look at that, we have to look at the contradictions. You know, God bless America, but America is not, a moral state. It's not.
Absolutely. Right.
So what are we saying when we say that arguably the most moral figure on the planet, Superman,
Mm-hmm.
is going about it the American way, is imposing, America's just inherently imperialistic, you know, disposition onto the
Certainly.
world. Um, like I think that it was really, really important to move away from the American centricness. And obviously like he's still very American centric. Like he literally is dressing the flag still.
Yeah. Essentially.
But even if it's a kind of symbolic shift, I think that's important.
No, I think Superman in and of itself is a symbol. Now, I don't know if you can see above my head here. I have a House of L crest with my last initial in it, and that's how formative it's been to me. Like it's just the idea that there is a figure of kind of irreproachable moralism and its truth, justice, and the American way. And some of my favorite stories, in the Superman, in the Superman comics, have been about him attacking what seems to be systemic wrongs. Like Superman bashes the Klan. For some reason, I just kind of love that one, you know. And so you see that, and you see them, but then also you look at like the Dark Knight Returns, and then Superman also becomes like a figure of the establishment. And so when you have those two like dichotomies of the same character, it kind of makes you think about the dichotomy of America. Like America presents itself as, the melting pot, land of the free, bring me your tired, poor, huddled masses. And then we're also, build a wall, kick everybody out. And it presents that dichotomy of what the thing that you love.
Yeah. Um, it definitely does. I so I really like if not the man, I like some of the words of Thomas Jefferson. I think that's a very controversial take. Um just because so obviously, TJ was garbage, right? He- but I think that represents he represents America, and I think he represents the confused soul of America. There's this one quote I like that I'm not going to say verbatim because I always mess it up like 100% of the time. But it's basically, you know, we have the wolf by the neck or something. Essentially justice in one hand and self-preservation in the other. He's talking about the institution of slavery, of course. But like we can map that onto like a lot of different things. We can map that onto the imperialism that America is still engaging in. What's up, Guam? We can map that onto, capitalism that, runs America, and how, like, whether you like capitalism or not, it's hard to argue with the numbers.
Right,
Capitalism,
right.
is one of the most deadly institutions to ever be created, right? Um, so yeah, like I think that America has always represented a confused soul, down to today. And I think it's, part of the solution, so to speak, is, speaking truth to power and, acknowledging, you know, the confused nature of America. Like one of my favorite political philosophers is Walter Rodney. And he talked about white cultural imperialism and how it's imperative to, you know, disabuse people of this notion that, black people haven't created anything, that white people have created everything, that white people are, the paragons of altruism, and, black people are the antithesis. It's imperative to, tell people the truth about, all of the historical contributions of black folks, right? Um, and like we see kind of the opposite of that happening right now, like this anti-CRT movement. Um, and it's like we're going to, hide and obfuscate the truth as much as possible. We're not gonna be able to we're not gonna allow you to learn Black history. We're not gonna let you learn Latino history. Um, we're um we're not gonna let you learn Native history, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because at the end of the day, even let's pretend for a second that America is like this super, moral state today, right? It would still be true that for the majority of American history, America has been the Galactic Empire. The America has been the capital in Hunger Games. America has been, you know, fill in the blank, really evil.
The scrolls, the key, the Kree, the Shi'ar, like they've, like you
Yeah,
name it. Yeah,
that's
they've been
them.
that. Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, I think it's just so important to understand that you are not Katniss, America. Like you're not Katniss. Um, and that can be, you being Katniss can be aspirational. You can say, I want to be Katniss, but in order for that to be made real, you have to understand that you are the capital today, and you have to reverse engineer that, right? Um, Back to Katniss, or to not back to Katniss.
So if you mind me, if you let me break in here for a second, because you brought up CRT, and
Yep,
I want you to touch on that and expound a little bit because you were a law student. You graduated law school. And so
yep,
one of the attacking points of the right on CRT has been that CRT is being taught in K-12 education. And so obviously as a law student, you um, probably study critical race theory. So dispel the myth that CRT is something that is distilled down to K-12 students.
it. So, well, one is if we're looking at the history of CRT, it was created in law schools, right? And you know, it has expanded where you know you can have it in, like, for example, like there are definitely like PhDs that are, you know, learning CRT, right? Um, but like you need to understand that, you know, critical race theory is not, you know, like this like gen ed uh when it comes to law school. So even a lot of lawyers, it if you were to ask them to speak in depth on CRT, they'd be unable to, right? So if that's the case, you just can imagine how ridiculous it is to say, oh yeah, that 10th grader is learning CRT, right? Um, critical race theory, I think, is such a great framework, and the right has just really bastardized it. And, you know, it's essentially been turned into a dog whistle for, you know, anything they don't want to teach, or anything that they deem bad. And by bad, just, you know, anti-racist. Like, um, yeah, like CRT, I look, I'll be that, you know, controversial dude, and you know, I wouldn't be opposed if, you know, like if it was a more
Certainly.
digestible subject,
Yeah.
yeah, teach the kids, you know.
Because
But
there certainly has never been racism embedded in the structure of of education and higher education.
never.
Certainly, if anything has been immune to racism, it has been education. Which obviously I'm being facetious here for those who can't tell. But yeah, so a lot of people are saying that now what they're able to do is couch anything that is relative to the history of Black people in this country, especially in a positive sense, couch it into critical race theory, and then get it removed from curriculum around curricula around the country. And so you're essentially practicing critical race theory by saying you're combating critical race theory, because what you're doing is you're whitewashing the history of
America.
Black people's contribution to this country.
Oh, actually, excuse me, I'm so sorry. I had to move. Do you mind if I grab my charger really
No,
quick?
no, you're fine. No. All right. So, you know, we're in this scenario where we have, you know, this term that says, um, this is the study of racism and how it permeates our society. And then you have those who say this is a way to label current generations with the sins of their ancestors. And so that's not fair. Therefore, rather than having a reasoned conversation on the issue, we're going to get rid of it. And as a matter of fact, now is our opportunity to get rid of all things Black history and, you know, Black edifying.
Yeah. What I would say is let's make a deal. We You did not enslave, you personally,
Hmm.
rando white person,
Right.
did not enslave me. You did not enslave my ancestors, right? So let's make a deal. We will, we can never talk about it, right? Because you, Chad, you didn't do the enslaving, right?
Right.
But you know, I believe in quid pro quo. So in
Mm.
exchange, you don't get to reap any of the benefits of slavery, of the black codes, of the Jim Crow laws, of the redlining, of the Homestead Act, of the GI Bill, of any of it. You the the disparate rates of, approving loans, none of it. We can act as if your ancestors' hands are clean. You do not get to avail yourself of all the benefits that those bloody hands gave you, though. If you agree to that deal, we're good. We're good.
So do you do you actually think that they would take that deal? Because the contributions of African Americans in terms of intellectual property and labor and everything else, and especially now in terms of culture, is so embedded in our economy. If you look at our GDP and you look at some of our greatest exports, I've been very fortunate to see most of this world. So I've been, pretty much, all over the planet, and I've never gone to a place where I didn't see evidence of Black culture, whether it's, a kid with a Tupac t-shirt on in Russia, or, someone, wearing a, LeBron jersey in Spain.
Yeah.
It's or someone listening to music, or the style of music that they're producing in their countries. And so I've never been anywhere where we haven't seen the influence of African American culture, specifically African American culture. So that's probably our largest and most profitable export in this country is Black culture. So I don't see a way that they would that deal would be acceptable, because if you look at the contributions of our economy,
Mhm.
it's at least half. It's at least half. If we look at our, 20 something to 30 something trillion-dollar economy, it's at least half. And I don't know if they're willing to go halves on that.
Yeah. So I'm of two minds, right? Because on one hand, I think that even, you know, the most ardent, anti-CRT folks, somewhere in their heart of hearts, they understand, you know, how bene how beneficial, the blood of my ancestors has been for their well-being and livelihood. Um, but on the other hand, we have to take it back to white cultural imperialism, because I genuinely don't believe that the average American, notice that I say white American, the average American truly knows the depths of Black and specifically African American contribution. Um, so like, and, and I talk about this a lot. When it comes to African Americans specifically, so I'm not talking about, Jamaican or uh Afro Nicaraguan or Nigerian, like specifically African American culture, it's seen as a cultural global commons. Um, if you are, because generally speaking, if you participate in, Jamaican culture, it is very clear you are participating in Jamaican culture, Nigerian culture, South African, uh, Afro-Brazilian, you name it, right? When it comes to African American culture, I think it's oftentimes seen as just American culture, right? So whether we're talking about, rap, R&B, uh, soul food, hip hop dances, etc., everyone's doing it in this country and the other 195, give or take. And it's just seen as American culture, and its creators aren't really given the credit for it. But like, what does that actually say? And what does that actually mean? That means that if I'm that Russian kid in the Tupac shirt, I can see his face. Yeah, it's a Black guy, right? but it's just American to me. I'm not really attributing that to Black folks. I'm not really attributing that to African American folks. It's just American. I am, you know, I'm taking part in, American culture because Americans are cool. So if we were to, racialize the conversation and say, hey, rando white person, would you be willing to get rid of all of the benefits and contributions of Black folks or African American folks, if we're getting more specific? They may not even, conceptualize it like that. Like, oh wow, no more hip hop, because that's all of ours. No, no more this type of food, that's all of ours. No more 80% of TikTok, that's all of ours, right? You
Right.
know, so I think we have a lot of work to do to even get to the point where the average Black person, no matter what part of the diaspora they come from, white person, Asian person, Latino person, etc., will look at rap, for example, R&B, for example, like, oh no, that is Black. I know Americans love it, but that is Black, right? So yeah.
So I think as that gets kind of brings us to a point, I think you said something where um, the Russian kid that I met in when I was in St. Petersburg, who had on the Tupac T-shirt, he just looked at it as American, and I think all Black people have ever wanted was just to be looked at as American. One of the aspects of white privilege that I don't think people realize is the opportunity to be seen as an individual.
Mhm.
And we have either been this monolithic group, or we have been seen as outside the fabric of America. And so, I really appreciate you being here. We're coming up on time, but one question: what are you reading now politically? What are you reading now? What are you reading, watching politically, and also what are you reading, watching from a superhero standpoint?
So much. When it comes to the comic book stuff, I'm really liking this new Superman run. I'm
Action
really
1050, the action comic.
Yeah, the Action Comics and the actual Superman one. So
Right,
that's
right.
illustrated by Jamal Campbell, who's one of my
Yep.
favorite new
Yeah.
artists. Everything with the X on the title, I
Of
love.
course. Of course.
Um, like Superman's my favorite, Wolverine's my number two. Um,
Okay.
like what I've been getting into like Black indies recently, so
Hmm.
Concrete Comics, Godhood Comics, a few
Yeah.
other. Um, I'm uh uh I just started reading, Bitterroot from Image
Hmm.
Comics.
Hmm.
That's a really cool one. I'm just looking at some of my more recent ones. The Milestone 2.0. Love all those.
Certainly. Yeah.
So many. When it comes to the political side, reading, a million articles here and there. I'm reading, I just picked up this one book, Fire on the Levee. It's about, this police killing of this Black gentleman about 20 years ago and the subsequent cover up. Um, uh, you know, Inglorious Empire, that's talking about, British colonialism in India.
Mhm.
Um, you know,
And for our listeners, everything that Joshua is reading, I'm gonna get that. It's gonna be in our show notes. We'll put links to it so you can go check it out too. Because he is giving you guys some work right now when it comes to upping your game in comics and in political readings. He is giving you guys some work. So all that will be in the show notes, and so I'm really going to ask you guys to go check that out. So Josh, where can people find you? Like where are you? So we came across each other on a thread, commenting on TikTok. You had a great take. on an issue, and I was like, hey man, I got to talk to that guy. So where else can people find you?
Yeah, LinkedIn and TikTok would both be great places to find me. So on LinkedIn, it's just my name, Joshua Drumming. Drumming is Drumming, just like drumming on a drum. As for TikTok, that also is a great place to find me. I'm currently on my TikTok because I couldn't even tell you off the top of my head what my oh, it's just my name. Cool. That's convenient. Joshua Drumming, one word on TikTok.
So
Um,
all the links to Josh, I'm going to connect with him on LinkedIn, and we already follow each other on TikTok. So I'm going to put every connection to Josh also in the show notes. Please go follow him. He is an intelligent young man, young brother, and he has some great stuff. And so I look forward to talking to him in the future. Like I said earlier, I feel like I'm talking to a younger version of myself. You get one of those. I'm thinking about the Flash promo in the trailer where he runs back in time and he runs into himself, and I feel like I'm having that moment right now with Josh here. So, Josh, I really appreciate you being on the show, man. I definitely believe we're gonna do this again because there's so many things that I think that you can contribute to conversations and shows that I want to have in the future. So, thank you guys for being on for being on today. And to all my listeners out there, continue to be kind to each other. Continue to think about the world around you and how you fit in it and how you affect it. Think about your power. Think about the presence of your power and think about the absence of your power because it affects change whether it's there or whether it's not. So just remember, continue to be someone's hero, and you don't have to be superhuman. Uh, you don't have to be superhuman to be a superhuman. So until next time, this is Michael Holmes. This is Superhero Politics Podcast, and we are out.